Hello guys, good morning. So today we are introducing Unit 5, but before I do that, I'm going to review sexual and asexual reproduction because we do need to know what those are, where do they happen, methods, advantages, and disadvantages of sexual and asexual reproduction. So I have my paper and I folded it hamburger style, okay, just so that I could divide it in half. And I drew, the line for the half, and I drew a title line. So I'm going to focus on the left side right now, and that is for your sexual reproduction. Okay, so I'm going to put a title first. Sexual reproduction. So what I remember from when we talked about sexual reproduction was that it required two parent cells. Okay, two parent cells to produce offspring. And the two parent cells that we're talking about the sperm and our egg. Okay, a sperm and an egg. So it requires two parent cells to produce an offspring. One organism can produce both sperm and egg, for example, a worm. Okay, but they do have to have two parent cells. It doesn't mean that they have to have two parents. It means that they need two parent cells. One organism can produce both sperm and egg. Okay, an example would be a worm. Now, that's what asexual reproduction is. Now, the method is what I'm going to talk about next. So I'm going to move that up a little bit. Okay, so the method is, and in animals it's going to be fertilization, and in plants it's going to be pollination. So in animals, this is done through fertilization. And in plants, this is done through pollination. So how does this look? Well, we have our, I'm going to move it up. Okay, we have our egg cell. Remember, this is our female. Okay, we have our egg cell. And we are going to get our sperm cell. And as a result, we are going to get an offspring. And where is this happening? So the location. Examples are when it happens internally, okay, would be an example for dogs, cows, humans. And if it happens externally, those examples are frogs and fish. Okay, so fish do not carry their offspring. They produce eggs that are fertilized, and then they're left there to sit until they're ready to be born. Now, there are, like always, advantages and disadvantages for the different types of reproduction. So at the very bottom part that I have left over for my notes, I'm going to talk about your advantages and disadvantages of these two types of, reproduction, or specifically sexual reproduction. So an advantage or advantages would be it creates genetic diversity. It allows some organisms to survive when the environment changes. Okay, so what do I mean by genetic diversity? Remember that the egg cell and the sperm cell contain different genetic material. They're not exactly the same. So whenever they fertilize and produce an offspring, the offspring is going to be genetically different than the parent cells. So if I put this into example, some of you might have some characteristics that make you look like your parents, but that doesn't mean you are genetically the same. And this unit 5, is going to talk about genetics. So you are going to be able to understand a little bit more on what happens, right, when fertilization occurs, especially with our DNA. Now, disadvantages. Okay, number 1, it takes a lot of time. Energy and resources. And number 2, it is a long gestation. So the amount of time it takes for the offspring to actually be produced is a really long time. So it takes a lot of time to actually produce this offspring. In humans, it's around 9 months, right? It takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources. So nutrients, when humans get pregnant, they need to be eating healthy so the baby is healthy, right? It's getting all the nutrients. It does drain the mom. It does take a lot of energy away from the mom. And it does take quite a bit of time, right? It does take 9 long months for this offspring to be born. Now, that is sexual reproduction, right? And again, I'm going to go over the beginning. It requires 2 parent cells. So it requires 2 parent cells. Okay? And it produces an offspring. Your method is either fertilization or pollination. You have your example of, the egg cell plus the sperm cell is going to give you the offspring. And you have your advantages and disadvantages. Now, we're going to talk about sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. So in asexual reproduction, it requires only 1 parent cell to produce offspring. Okay, it only takes 1 parent. 1 parent. So what is the method for asexual reproduction? I'm just going to move that up a little bit. Well, there are actually 2 methods for asexual reproduction. The first one is binary fission. Okay. And the second one, and I'm leaving a little bit of space because we're going to draw something, is budding. Now, in binary fission, we are going to have our parent cell, and then that cell is going to start splitting in half. So slowly Okay, I'm going to move these little lines right there. Until eventually we have two genetically identical, now offspring, or one offspring. Okay, so we have our parent, and then we're going to have, two cells. In budding, what happens is you have your cell, and then all of a sudden, a small little fragment of your cell starts detaching, and it produced an offspring. Okay, so again, you have your parent cell, and then you have at the end two cells. They're going to be genetically identical. Now, now we're going to talk about advantages and disadvantages for asexual reproduction. So your advantage or advantages, there's three. The first one is that no mate is required. Two, it doesn't take that long, so it's less time and less energy. Okay, those are two advantages that I'm going to put. Now, disadvantages, I'm going to put two disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that there's very little genetic variation. Which means that they are all clones. And the second one is that any bad genes are passed on. Okay, so instead of only passing on the good genes, because it's super fast, it takes less time, all these bad genes are getting passed on to the offspring. Now, if we look at both notes, let me zoom out. Okay, if we compare them, sexual requires two parents, asexual only one parent. Okay, methods, it's either fertilization or pollination, and here it's binary fishing and budding. Okay, here it's producing diversity, it's producing two different types of organisms. Here they're all the same basically. Okay, and even though sexual reproduction takes more time, energy, and resources, and has a very long gestation time, in asexual reproduction, they're not genetically varied, right? They're clones, and bad genes are getting passed on. So what you are going to be doing for today. So first of all, I want you to catch up on any work for my class, whether it be Asexual, independent practice. You do have an exit ticket for sexual and asexual reproduction. Okay, it is 2 questions, very straightforward. I'm going to be using that as one of your grades for this week, and I'm also going to use it for attendance. So please go in and submit your exit ticket. For anyone that's pending assignments that has been receiving messages from me, please complete your assignments. This is the week that I'm giving you guys to make up any work that you are pending for me. Have a great afternoon, guys, and I will be seeing you tomorrow.